Welcome to District Command Central, your go-to source for the latest news and updates on the Washington Commanders. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, so you never miss a play. It's been another dark week in Washington, and if you're a Commanders fan, you've probably felt this one in your bones. The loss to the Detroit Lions wasn't just another check mark in the L column, it was a gut punch. A reminder that the season that was supposed to bring redemption has instead turned into a slow-motion collapse. The Commanders now sit at 3-7 after Week 10, losers of 5 straight. And with every passing game, the energy inside FedEx Field grows a little more toxic. The hope that surrounded this team back in September has completely evaporated, leaving behind nothing but frustration, finger-pointing, and social media chaos. But amidst the noise, one particular target has emerged in the crosshairs of a restless fanbase: Terry McLaurin. And that, my friends, might just be the most misguided narrative of the entire NFL season. Let's rewind for a second. When the Commanders kicked off this campaign, expectations were sky high. This wasn't supposed to be another rebuilding year or a placeholder season. Fans genuinely believed this squad had the pieces to make noise in the NFC, with Jaden Daniels showing flashes of brilliance, a defense that, at least on paper, looked ferocious, and a coaching staff that boasted respected names like Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. It felt like the franchise was finally turning a corner. But here we are, barely past midseason, and everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. The defense has fallen apart. The offensive line can't protect anyone, and the coaching staff looks lost. Joe Witt Jr., once the defensive coordinator, has already been demoted, becoming the convenient scapegoat for a fan base desperate for someone to blame. Quinn himself has taken his share of heat, but strangely, in the middle of all this dysfunction, people have decided that Terry McLaurin, the face of the franchise, the heart of the locker room, is part of the problem. Now, if you've been following the Commanders for the past few years, you know how ridiculous that sounds. McLaurin has been the guy for Washington ever since he arrived. No matter how bad things have gotten, whether it was with the carousel of quarterbacks or the endless off-field drama, he's been the constant, reliable, composed, professional. And yet, this season, the noise around him has taken a bizarre turn. It started months ago with his contract standoff. McLaurin wanted to be paid like one of the top receivers in the league, and honestly, who could blame him? He's been a top 15 receiver in production despite playing with subpar quarterbacks almost every single year. But as the holdout dragged on, some fans started calling him selfish. The irony, of course, is that the same fans who begged the front office to finally pay their stars turned on him the moment he asked for what he deserved. The narrative only got worse when injuries hit. McLaurin has been banged up multiple times this season, and it's clear he hasn't been at full strength. He's played in only 4 games and hasn't looked quite like himself even when he's been on the field. That's natural. Nobody plays through nagging lower body issues without losing a step. But instead of acknowledging that, a portion of the fan base decided to spin it into a story about bad leadership or poor conditioning. Suddenly, his injuries were being blamed on the holdout. People started whispering that he wasn't in shape, as if a professional athlete who's spent years as the team's most disciplined player suddenly forgot how to train. It's one of those lazy, emotional arguments that takes root online and spreads like wildfire because it gives frustrated fans an easy villain. And then came the wildest rumor of them all, the one that had social media melting down. Out of nowhere, people started claiming that McLaurin wasn't even attending games, that he'd abandoned the team, that he wasn't present during the losses to Seattle and Detroit. It got so out of control that Jaden Daniels' own mother, MZ Jackson, had to step in on Twitter to set the record straight. She literally tweeted, "FYI, you know he's been at both games. When Jaden got hurt, he was in the locker room and he was there at the Lions game." Think about that for a second. It's gotten so bad that the quarterback's mom had to defend a star player from baseless rumors spread by angry fans. That's where this fanbase is right now, turning on one of its most loyal and selfless players, all because the season hasn't lived up to expectations. Let's be real, injuries happen. They're part of the game, and they don't care about timing or contract disputes or narratives. McLaurin didn't get hurt because he held out. He got hurt because football is brutal. It's chaos wrapped in pads and adrenaline. And sometimes even the best conditioned players go down. The idea that this somehow reflects on his character is absurd. You could have the best training regimen in the world and still take one awkward step and pull something That's not leadership, that's just bad luck. The Commanders' collapse doesn't have anything to do with McLaurin's absence. This team's problems go way deeper: scheme issues, inconsistency at quarterback, miscommunication on defense, and frankly, a lack of mental toughness that shows up late in games. Blaming McLaurin is like blaming the fire alarm for the fire. And let's talk about that leadership narrative, because it's downright insulting. Terry McLaurin has been the emotional anchor of this franchise since he arrived in 2019. He's been through more quarterback changes than most receivers see in a lifetime. He's caught passes from rookies, backups, and journeymen, and never once complained publicly. He's the guy who stays after practice to help the younger players, the guy who goes out of his way to praise teammates in press conferences, even when things go south. The guy who plays hurt because he doesn't want to let anyone down. This is the player fans are now labeling as toxic or checked out. Give me a break. Here's what's really going on. Fans are hurting. The Commanders were supposed to take the next step this year, and instead they've regressed. When that happens, emotions override logic. People look for someone to blame because blaming someone makes the pain feel controllable. It's easier to say McLaurin doesn't care any more than it is to admit that the front office overestimated the roster or that Dan Quinn's system hasn't worked. It's easier to tweet angry things about your star receiver than to confront the possibility that the rebuild might take longer than expected, but that doesn't make it fair. And it certainly doesn't make it true. The truth is, the Commanders' issues are structural. They're the result of years of inconsistent management, missed draft picks, and half measures. The defense has talent but lacks discipline. The offense flashes brilliance but collapses under pressure. Jaden Daniels is promising, but he's still learning. Dan Quinn, for all his experience, hasn't figured out how to get this group to execute when it matters most, and somewhere in all that chaos, people have forgotten that Terry McLaurin isn't the problem. He's part of the solution. When he's healthy, he's still one of the best route runners in the NFL, still one of the most dependable hands in the league, and still the type of player you build around, not tear down. It's also worth remembering that players notice these things. When fans turn on their own stars, it sends a message to the locker room. It tells players that loyalty doesn't matter. That one bad stretch erases years of hard work and goodwill. McLaurin has done everything right since joining this franchise. He's been the model of professionalism, even through the team's darkest stretches. If this is how he's treated during an injury-riddled year, how can the Commanders expect future stars to stick around? You can't build a winning culture by cannibalizing your leaders every time the record dips below .500. And look, this isn't about blind loyalty. Constructive criticism is part of sports. If McLaurin drops passes or underperforms when he's healthy, sure, talk about it. But inventing stories about him not showing up, questioning his character, and rewriting his legacy because the team is struggling, that's not analysis. That's desperation. Commanders fans need to take a step back and remember who Terry McLaurin is and what he's meant to this team. Without him, the offense would have been unwatchable for years. Without him, half the young players in that locker room wouldn't have had an example to look up to. At some point, the fan base has to draw a line between accountability and scapegoating. There are real issues in Washington, but McLaurin isn't one of them. The coaching staff needs to figure out how to stop the bleeding on defense. The offensive line has to protect Jaden Daniels better. The play calling has to adapt. But tearing down the one player who's given everything to this organization, that's a mistake that will only make things worse. So yeah, the Commanders are 3-7. And the season that was supposed to be a triumph is quickly turning into a disaster. But when the dust settles, and when McLaurin returns to full health, he's going to remind everyone why he's been the heartbeat of this team for nearly a decade. He's going to make those clutch catches again, lead those sideline huddles again, and carry himself with the same quiet confidence that's defined his entire career. And when that happens, maybe, just maybe, fans will remember that Terry McLaurin was never the villain in this story. He's the guy still holding the torch while everyone else loses their way. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on the Commanders' latest moves. We want to hear from you. Rumors are swirling in the NFL universe, and this one might just shake the very foundation of Washington Commanders' defensive strategy. Picture this: a stalwart, a cerebral presence in the secondary, suddenly available and potentially ready to step in and become the new anchor of the Commanders' defense. Justin Simmons, yes. The same Justin Simmons, who has long been recognized as one of the smartest and most instinctual safeties in the league, is reportedly hitting the open market, and whispers suggest that Washington could be the ideal landing spot. Now, we know that in the world of professional football, rumors fly faster than a quarterback on a hurry-up snap, and yet, when it comes to someone of Simmons' caliber, even the faintest hint of movement sends the fan base into a frenzy. Imagine a locker room where the defensive communication suddenly clicks into a higher gear, where signals are read almost telepathically, and where the backfield feels like an extension of the coaching staff. That's the type of impact Justin Simmons brings, and the idea that the Commanders could be orchestrating a move to bring him in is already generating talk from the press boxes to the tailgate parties. The narrative practically writes itself. Washington has been searching for that missing piece. The missing chess piece that turns a competent defense into a feared unit. They've invested in talent, sure, but leadership in the secondary isn't something you draft or sign lightly. It's earned over years of play, through instinct, film study, and the kind of on-field intelligence that separates good teams from perennial playoff contenders. Justin Simmons embodies all of that and more. He reads offenses like an open book, anticipating routes before the quarterback even thinks to make a throw, breaking up plays with surgical precision, and most importantly, commanding the respect of his teammates in a way that few can replicate. The Commanders, if the rumors hold water, might be positioning themselves to offer not just a contract, but a platform for Simmons to be the general of a defensive unit that has been searching for direction and authority. What makes this potential move even juicier is the timing. Simmons is entering free agency at a point where teams are evaluating not just skill, but the intangible qualities that make a championship-caliber defense tick. Washington has had flashes of brilliance in coverage and pass rush, but consistency and communication have been recurring issues. A player like Simmons doesn't just fill gaps in coverage. He elevates everyone around him. Cornerbacks play tighter, linebackers anticipate better, and the entire defensive structure gains an almost psychic coherence. The mere presence of a quarterback whisperer like Simmons can shift the dynamics of a game, even before the first snap, and for a franchise like the Commanders, the potential ripple effect is enormous. Analysts are already speculating how his signing could redefine the team's defensive philosophy, from aggressive zone schemes to more daring man-to-man matchups, all under the guidance of a seasoned mind who knows the game inside out. And let's not underestimate the psychological impact. There's a confidence that comes from knowing you have a player on your side who sees the field like a grandmaster sees a chessboard. The Commanders roster, young in parts and experienced in others, could suddenly have a cornerstone around which a true defensive identity is built. Coaches love players who can internalize complex schemes and make split-second adjustments, and Simmons has proven time and again that he thrives in such an environment. Rumors suggest that the team's front office is in active discussions, and even the possibility of him donning the burgundy and gold has been enough to energize the fan base. Social media is buzzing. Podcasts are dissecting every angle, and the speculation has become almost a sport in itself. Fans are debating his fit, his leadership style, and how he might interact with existing veterans, while insiders hint at the subtle but significant ways Simmons could influence the locker room culture. Then there's the storytelling aspect of it all. Imagine the narrative. A defensive lead arrives, and the Commanders' backfield transforms from a group of talented but scattered athletes into a cohesive unit capable of challenging the league's elite offenses. The intrigue is undeniable. Every coach worth their salt wants a player who can think several moves ahead, and every fan craves a moment where a single signing can redefine the team's trajectory. Washington has struggled at times with defensive consistency, and the presence of a mind as sharp as Simmons could be exactly the catalyst to spark not just a season of competitiveness, but a potential era of dominance. The buzz is already building, with insiders hinting that negotiations are nuanced, complex, and strategic, reflecting the value a player of his caliber brings both on and off the field. Of course, in the world of NFL rumors, nothing is ever guaranteed. Contract talks, cap space, and competing teams all complicate the picture, creating a dynamic environment where speculation thrives and certainty is rare. Yet, the story practically writes itself. A star safety enters the market. A team hungry for defensive leadership explores the possibilities, and a fan base dreams about the transformation that could come with his arrival. Analysts are dissecting scenarios, imagining how the defensive schemes could evolve, how communication could improve, and how a single elite player might inspire a shift in culture, accountability, and performance. The conversation extends beyond X and O's to encompass intangibles, leadership traits, and the elusive but critical element of on-field intelligence, all wrapped around the prospect of Simmons in burgundy and gold. And while it's easy to get lost in hypotheticals, the excitement is tangible. The Commanders' social media feeds are buzzing with speculation. Podcasts are devoting entire episodes to dissecting potential fits, and fans are already envisioning highlight reels of Simmons reading quarterbacks, breaking up passes, and making game-changing decisions. The storylines practically write themselves. Every cornerback lining up beside him, every linebacker in the vicinity, suddenly becomes part of a larger narrative of defensive cohesion and anticipation. Coaches and front office executives alike understand that acquiring a player like Simmons is about more than just the stat sheet. It's about establishing a standard, setting a tone, and sending a message across the league that Washington is serious about building a defense that doesn't just react, but controls the flow of the game. So, while the deal hasn't been signed and the ink isn't on any contract yet, the rumor alone has become a phenomenon. It's the kind of story that excites fans, rattles opponents, and keeps analysts talking long after the speculation begins. The Commanders, a team with aspiration of defensive solidity and strategic superiority, could be on the verge of adding a cerebral powerhouse to their ranks. Justin Simmons, if the whispers prove true, isn't just a free agent, he's a potential turning point. A new heartbeat for a defense that has been searching for rhythm, intelligence, and authority. And in the world of NFL storytelling, few developments are more compelling than that. A star player, a team in need of leadership, and a narrative full of promise, intrigue, and the tantalizing possibility of greatness. The buzz continues to grow, the speculation intensifies, and the league waits with bated breath to see if one of the premier defensive minds in football history will call Washington home, potentially redefining what it means to command respect in the defensive backfield. Thanks for tuning into District Command Central. Make sure to subscribe and follow us for all the Commanders news you need. Until next time, keep the faith and hail to the Commanders.